I think it is worth talking about the NCAA's the potential new house settlement coming out and the thought that the NCAA could be adding a fifth year of eligibility. This was brought back up again this week um, by a flurry of college athletes that are they're completely out of eligibility, but have entered their name into the transfer portal, and they were advised to do so. A few notable ones: Zeke Mayo from Kansas, basketball player, even put in their tweet that they were advised to enter the transfer portal, based on impending lawsuits and things like that, but that they're still doing this. And the reason they're doing this is because there is a belief now that the House settlement would go in the direction that the NCAA will undergo major reform, and that a fifth year of eligibility would be entered. So instead of having 4 to play 5, you get 5 to play 5. And it opens up a whole can of worms. But this was the fifth year of eligibility was kind of a pie in the sky thing in January. There was reports that it was dead and that it was just not happening. But now when you have all these guys entering the transfer portal and under advisement from agents and things like that, who are definitely going to be connected to what's happening with the law, with the house settlement and all that, it's worth noting that maybe this has momentum. Now, the fifth year of eligibility, we can look at and understand that this is going to cause a few problems, more than a few. It's going to cause a lot of the same problems that the COVID year caused. And we are still reeling from the effects of the COVID year. We're finally seeing the end of them, as far as guys that have COVID years available. I believe Tyler Miller at Iowa State has got to be one of the last people in the NCAA that has their COVID year available, and he's using it this year. You know, it caused lots of chaos in rosters for a number of reasons. Because one, you had guys that hanging around longer, hanging around on teams longer than they were expected, which throws off recruiting cycles, because now you just don't have guys leaving that you thought were going to leave, which means that you may end up with surpluses at certain positions of players, and you just can't find the time to develop them or find the time to get them on the field. That causes problems. Because when you add this fifth year of eligibility, you're also not adding scholarships. If they added a fifth year of eligibility and then just also added 20 scholarships and went back up to 125 or something like that, this wouldn't be as big a deal, because essentially your rosters could just absorb all of those fifth year seniors. But they are not doing that. And it's a tricky one. I do have a question from chat that I want to address before we get too far, because this is of a previous topic. Keith McGovern asks, do you think the Alston guy that had a big catch in the Pop-Tarts Bowl could have a big year? I don't know, because he is in the transfer portal. Isaiah Alston transferred last week as well. So he just wasn't able to crack up the depth chart. So he is in the portal now. So Isaiah Alston may have a big year, but it will not be for Iowa State, unfortunately. Back to the fifth year of eligibility. If you were going to increase scholarships, you could absorb those seniors and recruiting could stay largely in the same neighborhood. But when you're just staying at 105 scholarships and now you're adding an entire extra class of guys that are just sticking around, so it's now you call them, you have seniors, maybe you call them graduates or something like that, whatever, fifth year seniors, whatever you want to call them. That's going to change recruiting patterns, because suddenly you have a whole bunch of guys that are staying on the team that are just not leaving. So the year after this gets passed, you suddenly have a big problem, because you've already got a 2026 recruiting class. And now you have guys that can come back for another year of eligibility. If this gets passed this summer, Tyler Miller would be able to come back for another year, because he would just be given another year of eligibility. Would he choose to come back? I don't know. Is 7 years in college too much? Probably. But, you already have your 2026 class. So, which means that either You have a bunch of freshmen that are going to be coming to campus that don't actually have a roster spot, so they're going to immediately transfer. Or you have a whole bunch of fifth year seniors that they've already graduated with four, and now you have all these fifth year seniors. They there's roster that so they need a roster spot somewhere. Either it's going to be on the current team, or those seniors are going to have to hit the portal and go find someplace else. The problem is that every other team is also going to have a bunch of fifth year seniors that they don't have roster spots for. So you have all of these young guys and old guys that aren't going to have a place on the team and nowhere to go, because all of a sudden you've introduced an extra an extra class worth of players straight into the player pool in the NCAA. It's a huge problem. It's going to cause massive issues, and it takes away roster spots from guys. The balance of college football was great when you had 4 years to play 5. You could plan on certain guys leaving early. You could plan on them leaving after 4 years, whatever it is. And that's what it is. But now you have a whole bunch of guys sticking around that you can't get enough snaps for. So now they're going to leave, because that's the culture in college football now, is that if you can't get all the snaps you want right away, you just got to go leave and find somebody else that'll give you the snaps. This all trickles down. Now, does this mean that you have more guys leave and teams in the G5 get stronger because more experienced guys have to drop down? Potentially. But it all keeps funneling down. You have guys that'll drop down from P5 to G5, G5 down to FCS, FCS down to D2, D2 down to D3, and all the way down. And then all of a sudden, you have a whole bunch of guys that have transferred down, and this is already happening. But now it would get worse because you have an entire extra class in there. You have all these guys transfer down, and then all of a sudden, all these D3 guys, they have no place to go because they are at the bottom of the totem pole. Leaving their team in D3 to transfer out means they got to find a D3 or maybe an NAIA school or something like that. And that's it. There's no level below them besides NAIA or JUCO. But JUCO is also an interesting one, because now JUCO years don't count towards your NCAA eligibility. So you have guys that are more than willing to go to JUCO for a couple of years, because they're still going to get 4 years in the NCAA after they leave JUCO. So now JUCO roster spots are already taken up, and probably by potentially pretty talented players that just needed a couple of years of snaps to get ready to go to college. There's not enough room in college football for all of these players. There's just not. So now, instead of taking classes of 20, 25 guys, including high school and transfer portal, you're talking about, class sizes getting reduced down to 10, 15, at the most. There's not enough room. So all of a sudden, when you're chopping it down 10 to 15 instead of 20, 25, that you're cutting class sizes in half, basically. So now half of the amount of athletes get an opportunity to play college sports. That sucks. Like, it's unfortunate, because the more athletes you can have in college, the better. The more people that you can get every year to go in and be able to play college sports is good. It's absolutely good. Adding a fifth year helps almost nobody, including the athletes that would take advantage of it. It doesn't really even help them. Except for there might be a small group of guys that are good enough to make good money in college, but not good enough to make it to the NFL and make good money. So it's beneficial for them to just stay in college as long as they can, collect the paychecks as long as they can before they're done and they have to go work, in the professional world. There's a group of guys that probably fall into that, but for the most part, this is not really going to help much of anybody. It's not going to help the pros or the guys that are going to be pros, because they're going to be leaving. They're going to be leaving early anyways. And it doesn't really help the lower guys that aren't making a lot of NIL money, because now their roster spots are getting eaten up by guys that want to transfer down to get playing time. This doesn't help anybody. I think this is a terrible thing. It's going to mess everything up right away, and then it's going to continue to stay messed up for different reasons. The COVID year did a ton of damage to roster construction in college football, and it enabled the transfer portal to be as terrible as it has been. And if you add this fifth year without amending transfer rules, now if you amend transfer rules so that way maybe you get the first transfer free, but everything else after that is a year, more people will stick around. If I were the college football czar, I would go the first transfer is free, and then you can transfer for free anytime your head coach leaves. If your head coach leaves, you can transfer. Otherwise, you get one free transfer in college, and every time after that is a full sit out year. And it's not like midseason transfer where you sit out. It's a full, you have to sit out a full season if you transfer. And I think that would keep people in their place longer. Uh, would that fix the problem? Probably not, because now you just have guys not moving and sitting on rosters instead of moving and taking up roster spots. But at least that does more to help the lower division athletes that don't have a place to go down. Um, that helps them keep some of their roster spots, because then if you don't have a mountain of players transferring down and pushing guys out the bottom, you can at least adjust this through smaller recruiting classes from high school, which again kind of sucks because you have a bunch of guys that would ordinarily have the opportunity to play college football that just won't anymore because there just isn't place on any roster. But at least then you're not kicking out people that have already earned a spot to be on a college football team. I don't know. This causes lots of problems. There's this to the blame of many people, people that should have made these decisions, made different decisions 40 years ago. Um, this is not a new problem. It's not a problem that was caused 3 years ago or 5 years ago or when the transfer portal started or when NIL started or any of that. It's a symptom of old problems and old bad decisions that should have been changed a long time ago. But it's where we're at right now, unfortunately. And it's just we're just gonna have to deal with it, and maybe revenue sharing changes how this happens, and it changes the velocity of transfers around college football. So guys aren't jumping around so much because they have a guaranteed paycheck coming in, and schools frankly just can't afford to just toss out a ton of NIL money for something, because all these NIL firms right now, all these NIL collectives will be, functionally just become marketing arms instead of fundraising arms. So that changes things a little bit because now you have a baseline pay. You essentially have baseline pay for everybody, everybody in college football and basketball. Probably not a lot for the non-revenue sports, I would imagine. Most non-revenue sports probably get little to none.